You learn. And the fact of the matter is, 1%, zero, like if there's one verse, one mistake, it doesn't even have to be 1%. Yeah? One verse and there's a contradiction, I'll be like, God, the Quran, like the brother said, um, promise this is from God and God will preserve it. There's no mistakes in it, there's no contradictions in it. So I'm like, then it's not from God then. And I'll just continue my search because 99.9% is not good enough. That's the narrative Muslims are coming from. And the point the brother made before, I don't know if he emphasized it, is there's no there's an open challenge. Yeah, and there are a lot of people who is going against the political agenda. Islam is going against the political agenda, so they're spending money trying to discredit it, and even still they're unable to find mistakes in it. Now you're talking about the split between the Shia and the Sunni, right? What's that over? They're not going to say there's a mistake in the Quran. Does that make sense? So even Muslims, and no matter how much, like we may have different opinions, we all agree there's one Quran. We all agree that there's nothing been changed in this Quran. Does that make sense? So now we may put a little more emphasis on here rather than there. But again, it doesn't affect the creed. Does that make sense? And there are some Shia, unfortunately, I don't want to go too deep into it. Their belief will actually be very deviant and get them out of the fold of Islam. But the Islamic philosophy is very simple. Does that make sense? There's one God. God sent prophets and messengers, which I'm sure the Prophet's gone through with you. And the final messenger came with the totality of the message, which is being preserved. So we can actually give you a lineage of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to his, like how he cut his nails, to how we should run an army, to how we should treat our spouse, how we should treat our children, how we should raise children, how we should do business transactions. So it's a complete way of life. And then the Quran comes with um, more details in regards to that. And the Prophet Muhammad is like the practical example, so to speak. So it's a combination of the two. So we don't feel like the Quran, if there's any errors or any doubt you come with, then we say that, look, show it. Because the Quran says that if it was from anyone apart from God, there will be mistakes in it. And Allah has set an open challenge, and then I don't think the gentleman, I'm not sure if he's gone into in regards to the linguistic miracles of it. Does that make sense? So at that point, the Arabs, they were famous for the Arabic. And then we preserved the Arabic language, and then the linguistics of it is miraculous. And even now, we preserve the Arabic language by preserving the Quran. And just very quickly, we've got over 200 million people who have memorized the Quran, word for word, letter for letter, dot for dot, in the language it was revealed in. If you, when you get home, you Google Birmingham Quran manuscript, we have a carbon dated Quran in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then this is in Birmingham by academics who are not even Muslims, independent academics who are testifying to the preservation. I'm not even going into my Quran in Cairo or the Quran in a museum in Turkey. I'm saying, don't go far, let's just go Birmingham. You know what I mean? And yeah, and to us, that's secondary source. Our primary source is a oral tradition of memorization. So literally, I can introduce you to people who have learned the Quran, more so in Saudi Arabia, who have learned the Quran, and I can, from this person to this person to this person to this person, straight from the mouth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that's like 19 generations. You know what I mean? So for us, that's the proof for our preservation. And even yourself, I think, practically speaking, it's like if there's no error, if there's no contradictions, how easy is it to disprove something's not perfect? So this is why we're confidently giving you the Quran, saying, look, read it. You find a mistake in it, leave it.
Can you just define for me what you mean by a mistake or an error?
Thank you. Very good question. If there's a contradiction, if there's one moment where it says mathematical error, it says one number here, and then later on it talks about something different and it gives a different numeric number. Where 1 minute God is saying one thing, and then
Like, you mean like a year? Like it says
Yeah.
this happened in this year, and then later on
Yeah.
it said a different year. Okay, that would make sense.
So it's the Quran is from God. So when it talks about history, gets it right. There's things in here, but
Sorry, I want
no,
to
go for it.
just stay on defining the error. So
Oh,
you're
sorry.
saying
Yeah.
a contradiction is an error, and like
So I was
obviously
expanding. I was expanding on that point. So no, it's fine. So for example, we say the Quran is from God, and God is the expert of all subjects. So when it talks about science and history, and it talks about maths, and when it talks about the layers of the sea and so on and so forth, it can't be 1 minute saying one thing, and then later on you see that it's changed its mind. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So 1400 years ago, there was a debate in regards to if the world is flat. Does that make sense? The Quran's cargo is geospherical. It's like an ostrich egg. So then it's consistent with that message. Does that make sense? So when it talks about the sun, the moon having reflected light, it's consistent with that message. Does that make sense? So just to be more clear, so a contradiction would be um,
no, I got contradiction.
yeah. And what was the other one? And
But those two errors make sense.
yeah,
Would there be
and
another
errors and mistakes. So if there's any mistakes in regards to, because I heard the brother making the point in regards to how the Quran is ahead of its time when it comes to science.
Yeah.
So I would say when you get a chance, research Professor Keith Moore. He's a leading embryological expert who actually said that it's not possible for anyone to have this information when microscopes was invented. And he got awards from America for writing the best book on regards to embryology.
Keith Moore.
Yeah, Professor Keith Moore, yeah.
Is that how I spell Moore?
Yeah. And just to remind you, Birmingham Quran manuscripts as well. And yeah, and the fact of the matter is, my yardstick isn't science. If the Quran says something, right now, alhamdulillah, there's no like it doesn't contradict with science. But science is getting updated, so my yardstick isn't science. One of the things that was given to Professor Keith Moore was regards to embryology, the word alaka. Yeah, it has three different meanings. All three different meanings apply to how we understand the embryo now, as well as the understanding we had from 1400 years ago. For example, alaka is something leech-like, something that clings, and a blood clot. Yeah, all three of those meanings from alaka. Now, 1400 years ago, we thought leech-like, like the babies in the mum eats more food and is leeching off the nutrients from the mum. Yeah. Now, when you put the embryo through in a microscope, you see it literally looks like a leech. So you see how the knowledge is developing, um, and it still fits. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I'm not using science as my yardstick because um, it just means that science hasn't caught up with it yet. Does that make sense? But as of yet, like you've got a lot of Islamophobic people who's like, oh, here's a mistake, and here's where it contradicts, but they haven't been able to find anything. Does that make sense? And even, yeah, I don't want to give you like me myself because I'm in this field. I speak to a lot of non-Muslims. I'm inviting people to Islam. People would actually come to me with like so-called contradictions, and I'm like, okay. And a lot of them I can just answer on the spot. Yeah, and it's just their misunderstanding. It's their kind of Islamophobic website that's following a narrative. I'm like, well, that's not actually what the Quran says. Let's open up the verse. Let's open up the thing, and yeah. So I think that's where the confidence comes from. We're here every. Is it?
Yeah.
What's your takeaway, by the way, from this conversation, from what I've said?
Some clarity.
Yep.
Some direction for study.
Yep.
And I have had a few interactions with similar setups across London, and I always walk away feeling like Islamic people are very good people. That you're taking the time to bring people to the truth and educate them, and I'm very grateful for your time. That's what I feel right now.
You've had these conversations. What is? I heard you asking a lot of questions. Do you have any obstacles? If I was to ask you right now, what's stopping you from leaving this conversation as a Muslim, what would your response be?
I mean, I've been told twice now
Yeah.
that I am
I
one
think,
because
look, predestiny, okay? Yeah, everything's destined. You are destined to take the Shahada today. You know why? I tell you, no, Stephen, what he told me when I asked you about the hygiene issue, yeah? I didn't know this about you whatsoever. It's a personal thing. And the fact that you already do this, there's nothing holding you back. And what I said to you, no, I'm being serious. There's nothing that you don't lose anything either. Take that declaration because you know why? The fact that you do what you do already hygiene wise, that to me is a sign for someone who's already you just prepped. Does that make sense? You're already prepped to be a Muslim. And your question about your occupation, that individual, yeah, Cat Stevens, perfect. Okay. There's nothing else. And the question regarding the Quran, or the only way is by exploring it more, which you're reading. And up to now, from what you've read, there hasn't been anything in there you thought, nah, you've been blown away in the sense that you find it amazing from what you've said to me.
yeah, there's really great
So
stuff.
I would just say, what you believe in English, just repeat after me in Arabic and carry on and see how you go in your life.
I'm happy to do that.
Bismillah, it means in the name of Allah, yeah?
Bismillah.
Yeah, repeat after me. That's what that is. This is just
Okay.
that's the beginning of the coronation, I say. So repeat after me. I'm going to say shall I say in English first or Arabic? Let's do in Arabic, okay? Ashhadu al la ilaha illa Allah. Wa ashhadu wa ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasul Allah. I testify that there's no God worthy of worship except Allah. I also testify that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a servant and a messenger of Allah. That's it. Allahu Akbar. Yeah?
Thank you very much for your
Come
time,
on, bro.
gentlemen.
You're gonna get a hug from me as well. Welcome.